everyone, it's Maki here. Hathaway's Flash is still going strong. It looks like it will continue to roll out across English-speaking regions as well, which is really exciting news. This time, I'd like to share some content from the March 26th issue of the magazine Gundam. I'll be discussing the mechanical aspects based on comments from Mr. Nobuhiko Genma, who worked as both mechanical designer and mechanical supervisor. Some of you may be hearing the term mechanical supervisor for the first time. It appears to be a role unique to the Gundam series. In the interview, Genma mentions that it's essentially a position focused on coming up with ideas and that the cool-sounding title was added afterwards. Understanding his comments will enable you to enjoy the story on a much deeper level. This is relevant not only to Hathaway's Flash, but also to Gundam Unicorn. Of course, there's something important to keep in mind. Today's discussion will include spoilers for the film. The information about the mobile suits that we'll cover is limited to what has been officially released in the media. The same goes for any images we refer to. However, I know some of you prefer to experience the story without any prior knowledge. If that applies to you, feel free to skip this episode for now and come back to it after you've watched the film. Are you ready? If you'd like to support the channel, please consider joining the membership for just 99 cents a month. As a thank you, you'll receive a name badge and comment stamps. Alright, let's get started. First, let's talk about the type of work he was responsible for. Here, Genma uses the first film as an example. He discusses the vector tail stabilizer on the mecha, which is piloted by Galman. Many of you will probably remember the scene in which the mecha controls its posture in midair and fires a beam rifle for sniping. Surprisingly, this equipment wasn't specifically designed for stabilizing during sniping. The Earth Federation is a massive organization with abundant resources. Conversely, Maki, being a terrorist group, has a very difficult time receiving supplies. For this reason, the vector tail stabilizer was installed to reduce fuel consumption. It was Genma's role to come up with these kinds of settings and ideas. He also considered how the parts connect and how the structure allows movement. With his perspective in mind, it's interesting to watch the battle between the mecha and the Gustav cow. The Gustav cow fights by repeatedly jumping. As Genma explained, it uses its abundant propellant to keep jumping. At first, this might seem inefficient or even foolish. However, staying constantly in motion on the battlefield without stopping is probably essential for survival. Meanwhile, Gundam fights using the vector tail stabilizer. As Genma explained, they had no choice but to use this equipment in order to save fuel. Had resupply been sufficient, it's interesting to consider that Gundam could have successfully sniped without needing to stabilize himself in midair. This is actually very logical. Under the influence of Minkowski particles, sensors become ineffective. However, long-range attacks can still be carried out without issue if the target's location is fixed. For example, in Circe's counterattack, long-range laser attacks are used. As the target was a large asteroid, radar measurements were not necessary. Gundam's target is a building, not a mobile suit or a fighter aircraft. Therefore, there is no need to carefully aim while hovering in midair. This is why the vector tail stabilizer was originally a necessary equipment. Consequently, Goemon's mecha has the disadvantage of slowing down while airborne. The Gustav Cow pilots may be less skilled than Goemon. However, the Penelope is far more advanced than the mecha. Therefore, the ability to stop moving in midair became a fatal weakness. Genma's ideas shaped this entire battle. Now, let's move on to the topic of ALYZEUS. This mobile suit appeared in the second film and took many fans by surprise. So, how did the decision to include the ALYZEUS come about? First, Mr. Hajime Kotoki said that he wanted to introduce a mass-produced new Gundam. Mr. Kotoki is an incredibly skilled designer who has worked on many Gundam designs. He was the main mechanical designer on 00, 83 and Victory Gundam. Initially, the director Mr. Shuko Murase opposed this idea. He reasoned that the new Gundam represented a deep emotional scar for Hathaway, which would make it difficult to handle in terms of storytelling. Various mobile suits were then proposed as candidates to appear in the film's climax. At one point, Genma jokingly suggested why not have the Double Zeta Gundam appear instead of the damaged Penelope. Although Genma intended it as a joke, many of the staff began to consider the idea seriously. Lane could potentially have ended up piloting the Double Zeta Gundam in the climax of the story. As discussions continued, a new idea emerged. Perhaps Hathaway's emotional trauma could be incorporated into the climax. This brought renewed attention to the idea of introducing a mass-produced new Gundam. Further discussions revealed a new requirement. The new mobile suit that would appear in the climax could not be stronger than the Gundam or the Penelope. If a mobile suit stronger than the Penelope appeared, people would ask why didn't they just use that mobile suit from the start? And that wasn't the only condition. Hathaway and the Gundam also had to win in the climax of the second part. For this reason, the mobile suit that appeared in the climax had to be weaker than the Gundam. To satisfy the audience, a new mobile suit had to appear that was also weaker than the main character's machine. Confronted with this challenging task, Genma and the team continued their discussions. And little by little, the idea of ALYZEUS began to take shape. At this point, Genma insisted that the term prototype must never be used for the ALYZEUS. In the Gundam series, the word prototype has a very specific meaning. The first Gundam itself was also a prototype. Genma also cited examples such as the Tall Geese and the Wing Gundam Zero from Gundam Wing. Although they are older machines, when piloted by skilled pilots, they can perform as extremely powerful mobile suits. Within the Gundam series, the word prototype already conveys that kind of image. This is why the ALYZEUS could not be a prototype. So Genma came up with the term experimental model. He created this term to describe a mobile suit designed for training purposes. By combining these elements, the ALYZEUS was born. The new Gundam was assigned the role of stimulating Hathaway's emotional scars. This created tension in the battle, despite the fact that the ALYZEUS is weaker than the Gundam. If Hathaway had simply overpowered and vanquished the ALYZEUS, the audience probably wouldn't have been as excited. Then, external armor was added to the mass-produced new Gundam to fulfill the concept of a heavily armed mobile suit like the Double Zeta Gundam, while also serving as a training unit for the Penelope. Apparently, the design of this external armor was inspired by the Penelope design from the novel version. Genma also revealed some of the finer details. Attached to the outside of the mass-produced new Gundam's arms are even larger arms. These dummy arms are installed to adjust the weight balance to that of the Penelope for flight training. When I first saw the design, I got the impression that it might be intended for fighting with 4 arms. However, it seems that these outer arms are purely decorative and not intended for use in combat. Now, let's move on to a topic related to Gundam Unicorn. Genma assigned the ALYZEUS the role of being a mobile suit weaker than the Gundam, but one that still has to make the climactic battle exciting. He explained that this idea was inspired by the appearance of the stock Jegan in Gundam Unicorn. Genma was also involved in producing the battle between the stock Jegan and the Kushot Rear. At that time, he was working as chief animation director. Initially, the stock Jegan's battle was very short. However, Genma felt that this would lead to a poor outcome. In that scene, it was important to show the Kushot Rear as powerful. However, he believed that in the original concept, this would instead make the stock Jegan seem weak. Therefore, Genma made it a key part of the direction that the stock Jegan's pilot demonstrate highly skilled control and precise decision-making. By portraying the stock Jegan as a powerful mobile suit, Genma aimed to make the Kushot Rear seem even more powerful. Genma applied this same idea to the ALYZEUS battle scenes. Combining this approach with Kotoki's idea of the mass-produced new Gundam and director Morose's concept that the new Gundam would evoke Hathaway's emotional scars brought the climactic battle to life. Finally, let's talk about the shelf nozzle. This technology first appeared in Gundam F91 and is also equipped on the ALYZEUS. Some fans speculated that this meant that crossbone Vanguard technology was being secretly tested. I was one of them, of course. However, Genma dismissed this idea. In fact, the idea of it being crossbone Vanguard technology didn't even occur to him. He explained that the name simply came from combining the word shelf, referring to the shape, with nozzle. He compared this to the weapon called the funnel, which is used by both the Earth Federation and New Zeon. Even though the detailed shape and function differ the same term, funnel is still used. Nevertheless, Genma did not claim that the ALYZEUS' shelf nozzle was completely unrelated to crossbone Vanguard technology. He said how the shelf nozzle will be treated in the future is something I'll leave to other creators. Depending on their ideas, the background of this technology may be defined. Genma's approach seems to have been to leave room for other creators to expand on the concept rather than defining every detail himself. He also mentioned that the shelf nozzle on the ALYZEUS is technology that began development around the time of Gundam Double Zeta. It is equipment that can be installed on units such as the GM3 or Jegan, providing characteristics suited to specific operations. What decisions will future creators of the Gundam series make? In that sense, the ALYZEUS also plays a part in laying the groundwork for future possibilities. That's all for today's discussion. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I'll see you in the next episode.